from the beginning, I'm going to say that what's real and what is not real, or what is true and what is not true, I have to determine that. I have no other way to determine it other than personal agency. And I'm going to say that there are 5 ways, 5 proofs, or 5 gateways into personal agency, or understanding personal agency, meaning what impact can I make on my world? What am I a victim of my world? Is it just, I watched 1984 last night. I'd like to do a kind of a review of what that is. But it's really kind of a very, very dark concept that the human spirit can be utterly, crushed, manipulated, and controlled, and that the context or the agency of a person can be absolutely and completely hijacked by large, powerful entities. And I know that that's proven in isolated circumstances, but it leaves me with a sense of helplessness. And I go, well, is that helplessness about my ability to have full agency in my life? Is that just a reaction and an intended consequence of the media? Well, yeah, the answer has to be yes. Because if you go into any other culture, you go into other some sort of indigenous or native or small groups where you're talking about dozens rather than billions of people, where they organize at the level of tribal identity or something. Those people, the culture itself has to increase their sense of power, has to increase their sense of belonging, has to contribute to their sense of self-esteem, either through challenge or reward or whatever. But it has to, for the well-being of that group of people. We're in a unique situation in these modern circumstances to where, for some reason, a lack of health is a desirable outcome in terms of food, even medicine, information, a lack of health. Well, that means that this isn't a culture that's working. It's not culture that's driving this. This is an anti-culture. So I'm in the situation, you're in the situation, all of us here, we're in the same bathtub of how do you make a meaningful contribution or understand my sense of agency, my identity, and who I am, what's real and what's not real, given that I'm in a toxic soup. That's why I have to talk about it. I wouldn't have to talk about it if the culture at large, if the facts or information in Encyclopedia Britannica were an unbiased reporting of something that we could all see and experience. Or if the news itself was reporting something that was just sort of factually accurate, or that fashion was not given to us as a sense of shelter, clothing, practicality, and all this kind of stuff. None of the above is true. In every situation, every circumstance, the human person is really a kind of a victim of an unreality, a victim of a kind of an unreality. And so this video is going to give 5 basic tests, and the main engine or parameter for each of these tests is going to be my sense of agency. To what degree can I participate in knowing it? To what degree am I active in that sense of what is real and what is not real as presented by these gates? the first gate is tactile, tangible. Watch. I can bite my finger. I leave tooth marks. So I know that I bit my finger and I can feel it. And that establishes I'm in something. And being that I'm in something, questions come up like, who put me here? Or why would I be here? Or how did I come to be here? Certain kinds of questions. And that's, a good one for that realm, that first portal of tactile reality. I'm in a circumstance and I don't really know anything about it, other than I find myself here and I can punch the wall and I can see buildings and I feel a sense of up and down and gravity. So by examining this world, I can see that there are laws at work, laws of up and down, gravity. There's laws of the thermodynamic laws, or whatever you call them, of, for every action there's an equal opposite reaction, sort of. In other words, you can push a person and they move a couple inches and there's a likelihood that they're going to push you back, let's say. So I'm in a world to where I cannot walk through a wall. That's what a door is. A door is a movable wall. So you can look at this physical reality as my first gateway into what is real. And I can spend time with that in a contemplative mode and understand who and what I might be in terms of this tactile reality.
If I release it from this height and it swings, then when it reaches here, it could not be higher. There is a conversion from gravitational potential energy to kinetic energy back to gravitational potential energy, and it will come to a stop here. And when it swings back, it should not be able to reach any higher, provided that I do not give this object an initial speed when I stand here. I trust the conservation of mechanical energy for 100%. I may not trust myself. I'm going to release this object, and I hope I will be able to do it at 0 speed, so that when it comes back, it may touch my chin, but it may not crush my chin. I want you to be extremely quiet, because this is no joke. If I don't succeed in giving it 0 speed, then this will be my last lecture. I will close my eyes. I don't want to see this. So please be very quiet. 0.
The second gateway is that there are dynamics here. It's not simply that things are here. It's that there are certain dynamics here. There's almost a communication between, let's say, a light and the room around it. The light, if it's an incandescent bulb, it heats up the room. Light comes from somewhere. So that there's the cause and effect of, a duality. An object in its context is in like a dialogue with its context, and you can observe it all over the place. I can drop the ball and it falls, or it bounces if it's a certain kind of a ball, and it can go through the floor if it's, a shot put or a bowling ball. So you've got a way of seeing an interaction of objects in their environment. It's not just that I bite myself and I'm here like an alien. Not only is that the case, I'm in a dynamic relationship of objects, things, labels, and their reactions or their motions in that world, so that there's an energetic flux that's associated with everything, every object, whether it's a momentum kind of a thing or an inertia kind of a thing. Now, and that's not all there is to that. The other side of it is that it has a kind of a direction. You spin the wheel and it's going to wind down. Again, with a contemplative approach, you can see you spin the wheel, it's going to wind down. Now you can assign physical laws to it and say that it's friction or entropy, or whatever words you want to hang on it. But you can see that everything, all these dynamics come to an end. That's the most obvious trajectory of this duality, is that it comes to an end. By extrapolation or interpolation, you can say, well, that means this whole thing is going to fold up. That means the whole thing folds up. If I'm understanding duality correctly, I can assume that not only is my lifetime going to close up, but every action I do and every miserable thing I experience, as well as every good thing I experience, is going to wind down. But that's not all there is to that. Yes, it winds down, but it winds down in a certain direction, in a certain way. It's not random, and that takes this more contemplative approach of looking at how are things, when they do wind down, how do they go? Can you observe the way they go? And there are dynamics to that observation. As they say in the new physics literature, the observer determines the outcome. And so if I'm expecting certain things, well, lo and behold, those things tend to happen that way. If I walk into a room and I think people are going to laugh at me, well, I'm going to see somebody laugh at me. And then I'll think, well, there you go, boom, I figured it out. But another person could walk into the same room and their conclusions about being laughed at, or their belief that they're going to be laughed, they could filter that out. And someone could be laughing at them, but they're really paying attention to the people that are raising an eyebrow in their direction. So obviously, I help to determine the dualistic motion of things. So that's the second gateway, is that there's a duality that goes round and round, but it is not neutral. And not only do I help to determine what that lack of neutrality is. In other words, hey, don't think of a monkey, and you're going to think of a monkey. Or I'm going to tell you what, the color blue is really out there. Well, and everywhere you go, you see the color blue. That's the nature of the mind. But even beyond the nature of the mind and this duality, there seems to be something else. Call it the brakes, call it fate, call it the roll of the dice, but it's not pure random chance. And you can observe that with people. Bill Russell calls it, one of my basketball things, shooter's bounce. In other words, you can, in basketball, if you don't practice, the ball's going to bounce around the rim and then flop out. But if you practice and practice and practice basketball, the ball's going to bounce around the rim, and a lot of the times it falls in. So there just seems to be a tendency that, if I practice and observe in a certain direction, the world delivers back to me in a certain way, as though we're in communication. As though there's a conversation there at the second gateway of just the observation of cause and effect with direction. The third thing is that there's an enormous gap between me and this world. You have to observe this gap. The gap is a perceptual, conceptual gap. Where did it come from? I mean, it's like it's so far away. The source of this thing. Can you imagine? We have stepped into a thing, and there's very little like surprise or awe about this. But you step into a world that was here waiting for you. You know, it's almost as though you've got this whole thing waiting for you to come into it. And it's like there's no way for me to figure out or to understand or to comprehend the source of this thing. So I recognize that gap, which can lead to a general sense of smallness or desolation or the void. Or in another way, it can lead to a sense of humility, a humble acceptance that I'm in a circumstance as a very small effect within a larger, much, much larger context, seemingly infinite context, that I had nothing to do with creating. And it even though it seems neutral to my presence, like it doesn't care whether I come or go, it's very responsive to me, this thing. So that distance between me and this thing is a third observational gateway. Again, the contemplative approach. What does it mean to be in a situation that is so far removed, so distant, so much larger than me, so much larger? And the thing is, I have the agency in this to seek that horizon. I can seek that horizon as a major and probably very important, profound decision on my part to seek the horizon of this environment that I was dropped into. So you start with, what are my brothers and sisters really about? Man, it's really dry in here. Start with what my brothers and sisters are up to, or my family, our community. I understand the workings of that. I go forward with enlarging my social sphere, enlarging the things I can do, the things, my abilities, the things I can understand. And I can carve into this vastness, and that we have certain people that have accomplished, like let's say Leonardo da Vinci, where he's an inventor, he's a painter, he's a sculptor, he's a whatever, he does all these different things. And so we say, well, he's a Renaissance man, he's an evolved being, but we base that on how far he carved into this thing. And there are some people who carve into it very, very deeply, and there's some people who seem to not, who literally, as they say, the space they take up is all that's there. But does that mean anything? Not necessarily. The point here, rather than going on and on, is distance. Distance between myself and this thing, and my privilege or even entitlement to be able to move into that distance and to understand, comprehend, move to, knowing full well one can never reach the horizon. It's not possible. So the gap remains. No matter what my progress is in this, the gap remains. This is an aspect. I could say it's reality itself. Maybe each of these is a reality in toto, each of the five. So the next one would be, let's see, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, is that I am in a world of impacts, and they come at me, And part of my agency is to decide. This is another aspect. It's a portal into reality that as George Bush said, I'm a decider. I have not only the agency and the privilege and the opportunity, but it is forced upon me by just being here to decide. And that decision making isn't empty. It has to do with understanding values and determining values. What's good and what's bad? What kind of being do I want to be? Am I driven by the power imperative? Am I driven by an aesthetic imperative? Am I driven by just simply a need to know? Or am I driven by pure comfort, just comfort, and that's all? What is actually moving me through this process that I'm in? And in that, all this information is coming at me. This world imposes itself on me relentlessly. I close my eyes, and there's still, the mental world is imposing itself on me. If I open my eyes, the visual world, the tactile world, the auditory world comes in me, and I can insulate myself against it. But again, that is already then a value. No, I say no to that, and I isolate myself into myself. Choice is imposed on me, whether it's like, come to Papa, and I give the reality a big hug, or I say, no, thank you very much. I've had quite enough of you. I don't want to have anything to do with you, reality, and I'm going to do the best I can to isolate myself. But that's a situation I'm in. That's a situation I've been given. You think I didn't dream it up, and I don't think you dreamed it up, and I don't know anybody else who dreamed it up. It just is here as reality, that I'm a player in this thing, a serious player. There are no options here. So that is the fourth, and I'm going to call that one feeling my way towards values. I don't know, feeling values, because that's what we have. When it comes to trying to find values, you have, there's this thing which I'm actually not familiar with called heart math or something, but it has to do with this. I think if I understand it, what little I've heard about it, is that the heart itself is a brain. The heart is a brain. The brain is a brain. The heart is a brain. So that we have these other non-local brains in our body and even out there somewhere. But the heart is a brain. And that it thinks. So that when I have a situation of determining value, understanding value going forward in this place, with all of these impositions and me creating a value system, which also amounts as a certain sort of a filter. Yes, this, no, not this. I create these filters. With that process of creating filters, creating values, and now those values are also informed. I can read Augustus Caesar on his values, and I suppose I could read Eminem on his values or listen to his music to determine values. I can go wherever I want to go, and many of them are very inspiring. You can go to somebody who's a great, sensual, sort of an indulgent kind of a person, and they've got a value system that could be quite wise. So you can read about their value system and not necessarily become this, I forget what the word for it is, but you don't necessarily have to go that way, but you can be inspired by that particular value system. There's examples and mentors and whatnot. Why? Only to create my own value system. It's not to copy people. It's just to create a cachet of various kinds of filters, and that's an infinite process, really. But before acting, instead of just acting, and my first filter is, I want to do it, I don't want to do it, I want to do it, or this is what I'm scared, I gotta move, or I'm happy, I gotta move, or whatever it is, or I'm frightened, I gotta hold up, I gotta stop. Whatever these sort of jerky motions, these knee-jerk impulses, impulse control, obviously, impulse control. They always say that, you work on your impulse control. Well, it's true. to say, well, here's something coming in, and then what system do I go through to? Now, the point being, yeah, this could get to be a kind of a moralistic deal. It's not my point. My real point is that it's here. And I didn't set up these rules. Now, I have the option of playing according to some rules and observing the way that they really, really function. That's a decision I'm allowed to make. I can even enhance the brain or the mind that has an ability to understand the circumstance I'm in. You know, these are all fabulous opportunities. Now, the last portal, the last gateway into reality and what is real and what is not real is, I'm going to say, relationality, communication. I don't know how you are, but in a way, if I feel like I can't communicate with this field of possibility, it's a field of stuff. If I cannot communicate with it, it's because I either feel blocked, I feel too small, I feel that it's insensate. In other words, it can't hear, or it is unwilling to respond. I have these different kinds of filters that I may have learned from childhood or learned from being sophisticated. You know, welcome to the world, bud. You know, bare-assed and five below, now you got to deal with it. So there might be that kind of thing going on with it. But really, before all that, I have to notice that I have an urge to communicate with my environment. I could feel shunned by it. I could be bitter about that. I could be, you know, stoically accepting. But it's necessary to recognize that the environment is there, and within me, welling up from inside of me, is a desire to communicate and make an impact. No pun intended, but if I drive in a nail, the nail was not in the wood before, and I can drive the nail into the wood. I've made an impact on an object, on the world. I've used energy, all that kind of stuff. In other words, this life is nothing but wanting to make an impact. And the ultimate impact, it's easy to pick up a piece of wood and hammer nails into it. And I can say, boom, he sticks in his thumb and pulls out a plum and says, what a good boy am I. So I can make an impact on these things. I can do my little dance, or I can paint my little picture, I can say my little poem, or I can lead my little group, or I can read my little book. I can do these things. I have all that available to me. And that's a great part of this field. But there's the aspect to be honest with myself. I want to communicate with the field itself. Why? Because the field seems to generate this stuff. The field seems to have possibilities in it. If you can talk to the field, and the field talks back, you are really onto something in terms of agency, meaning reality. Reality with a capital R, I'm going to argue on this last one, would be to be able to fully, to bring to fruition, full fruition, the urge to communicate with my environment and to hear what it says, understand it, and be able to adjust my actions, my circumstances, my attitudes to the field based on that dynamic relationship between me and that field. Whatever situation I find myself in this field, and the field is offering me all these different fevered dreams of reality, how do I determine what's real? I'm going to say that it has to have to do with personal effectiveness, personal agency. So reality begins small. Reality. What is reality? What is real? It's going to begin small. Like a small child, they're just trying to get agency over their own body. They have no control over what people do with them or any of that kind of stuff. And so their world is as large as where they have effective action. They begin to practice that with expressions they make, or they start to see that laughter or expressions they make has a cause effect. It goes on and on till they can walk, they can move objects, they can go from here to there, they can run across the room. Now, as you can see that for a human being, my sense of effectiveness, my sense of agency has to grow. It doesn't have to grow, but it's part of the trajectory of being a human being. And then you get to a certain point where it grows physically, it grows physically, it grows physically. And after it gets to a certain point to where that tops out, yeah, you can go to Europe if you want to, that kind of thing. Then it's socially, or it could grow out experientially. And so reality has these orbs that go out, but something is moving you to understand it. And I'm going to say that if I don't explore that dimension of agency and effectiveness, if I don't explore the dimension of what are my filters, why am I choosing what I'm choosing, how am I making these choices, how much of my choice is based on avoidance, how much of my choice is based on sort of an addictive response, where I've got to have that thing, let's say. A lot of ways, but the point being that I have a sense or a tool or an element of my reality of being able to be effective in an environment. What is driving it? What is pulling it along? And I have the ability to get outside of myself and look down in myself and see that process. And I'm going to say that the more clearly I can get, the more clearly I'm moving to the edge of agency, the edge of effective action, the more I'm getting the edge of that, looking down in myself, I'm getting closer to the field. In other words, the field, which is not like an orb out there, it's not like a bubble, like a dome, like a plastic dome of some sort. The field is a continuum that goes all the way inside and outside. You know, you can see that there's this idea of agency or lack of agency all the way down into the body, into the environment, and all these kinds of things. So just to recognize, obviously it's a bit of a mind trip. It's also a contemplation, but that's also in kind with the way the mind works and the way the brain works. And the further I go, like take an infant crawls, and they've established an effective world at a certain level around themselves, and that's their world. And I'm going to say that the field smiles on them at that level. Now, if I, as an adult, get down on my hands and knees and try to recreate the world of an infant, and I'm crawling around and I'm thinking that the field is going to come at me at that level, it's not. Or put it this way, it's going to come at me at the level of maybe, wow, your knees hurt, or wow, this isn't all that productive. You know, I mean, the field is going to come to me to get me out to my appropriate level of understanding and exploring the field. This is the communication with the field, and that's step number 5. All of that I'm talking about is to recognize that I have that implicit, innate desire to communicate with the field. So, you know, the first one is a kind of it's here, pinch me, I'm here. The second one is, you know, cause and effect, but with a direction. And then the third one is notice the gap that between me and the field. There's this gap that I didn't ask for and that seems potentially unbridgeable. And then the fourth one is I devise my own value systems. I devise my own filters for how to act and what to hear and what not to hear. And that's, you know, it's my domain. In a sense, I'm a bit of a sovereign there. Even if toxic material is coming in at me from the outside, I can reject it based on feeling, based on how it makes me feel, based on what I conclude about it. And I also have the ability to test at that level of whether something is a worthy filter for my action or not. And then the last one is communication with the field itself. In other words, notice that in a sense, I am in kind with the field. That I'm an element in, you know, the field being a generic term for all that is. And that I'm an element within that all that is. And that as an element of that, there's a natural kinship with myself in the field. And I would argue in a sense that my ultimate success in determining and understanding and participating in reality, true reality, is a friendly, somewhat intimate ability to relate to that field that at the start was infinitely far away. Thank you very much.